I think mental toughness is so overemphasized in our industry. If you look at what mental toughness is from a research perspective and the way that it's broken down, is like, it's your ability to stick through a task with discomfort. Great. An ability that we all need. But the hyper focus on it, first of all, it's ego based. Do you want to suffer, or do you want to go show people how tough you are, or what is it? Okay, it's the ability to stick with a task through discomfort. What if it's the wrong task? What if you're doing the wrong thing? But because you're so focused on being tough, you don't keep your eyes up and do something better that might cost you less energy, that might put you in a better position. It's overemphasized. I'm not saying de-emphasize it, but I'm saying it's overemphasized.
I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp, with the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt Podcast, and we're joined by my buddy Todd Bumgardner. Welcome back, Todd.
Good, buddy. It's nice to see you. I'm sure it's nice to see me too. It's been a while, so.
Yeah. I've been, I just like, I really need to see Todd's face. We text back and forth, but we don't FaceTime each other very often. So
exactly right. No, I'll be better about that. And, I'll send you more love letters. I know I stopped doing that too. So
I appreciate it. And being out in California right now, like you're out in some nice weather, for at least from what it looked like. I saw your Instagram reel this morning doing a little bit of a trail run there. It looked nicer than what we have here in PA.
It's weird though. We had like a week of winter, and it's literally, I think today is going to be 65, and that's kind of been what it's been doing. Dude, like turkeys are going nuts. It's crazy, man. Yeah, 68 degrees, 69 degrees today by 3 p.m. So,
oh my gosh.
I don't know. It's weird, man. I'm glad I came back. I went to Nevada to hunt chuckers with my buddy Jordan, and I got stuck in Lake Tahoe on the way back in a snowstorm. And then I just was in Montana last week, and it snowed the whole time I was there. And I'm glad, because I was saying to the folks that I live on the ranch here that like I feel like I'm getting cheated out of winter this year, because like we didn't have like a traditional winter, and winter here is mild to begin with. So I was like, man, at least I got snow up in Tahoe and out in Montana,
Yeah. Well, hey, next time, you're from Pennsylvania, but you just come back and get a little taste of it. This winter's been a long one, so.
That's all my buddies back home. And I was there over Christmas, and we got some snow, and it was cold, and I was like, man, it felt good to have it, because I'm not going to bitch, like going outside and hearing turkeys gobble and feeling the warm sun and everything. It ain't bad, but I like winter. So I'm missing it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. I think for me the perfect balance would be like a month of winter, a month and a half maybe, and then more spring, fall. If we could like extend those seasons, that'd be really cool. If it were up to me.
I get it. And that's like my favorite things. Well, I do like hunting waterfowl quite a bit, but my other favorite things to do are all spring and fall related. So I'd be in for a little bit longer, one of each,
Yeah, definitely. And so what else you been up to? How's everything going with Human Predator Pack Mule, and anything new on those fronts?
Yeah, man, things are good. We've really expanded our fully guided program, which is like our totally individualized program, which is, folks come in and they go through testing, and I even customize some of the tests depending on what the person might need, and then completely individualize their training. And so that program has been something we've been spending a lot of time on this year, which has been great. But, Backcountry Ready, I'm sure if you've seen, we've evolved that. Like the programming is getting even more dialed in. And Jordan, my co-coach, I hate saying assistant. He is my assistant coach, but I don't like saying that. My co-coach in Human Predator Pack Mule is just like dialed in on the Backcountry Ready stuff and helping folks and making sure that everybody's getting what they need and moving forward in the way that we need to. So it's been a good year. We started off 2025 strong, man.
Yeah, and I just was looking at it. This is year 5 that I've been training with you. For anyone that's listening that hasn't listened to Todd on here before, the owner and founder of Human Predator Pack Mule, being able to help hunters get ready for backcountry hunting and just really anything in life, and living a healthy lifestyle, being stronger and in better shape. And this is year 5 for me going through the programming. I love how seeing it evolve, and I pick up again from doing it for so long. I'm able to pick up on those little changes and those things in the programming, and it's been a lot of fun to be able to see that. And for someone like myself, that I've always liked working out and liked fitness, but I do better with direction and having some clarity of like, I'd rather someone give me like, hey, this is what you should do today to hit your goals, versus thinking about it and going through, and that helps a lot.
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, we all have our areas of expertise and like certain things that cost us more energy than they should, right? Like, listen, I hunt whitetails. Well, I didn't this year because there are none here, but I like to hunt, and I hunt whitetails. And when I have a problem with that kind of stuff, I ask you, because I know how to hunt whitetails, but I don't know how to hunt them as well as you do. So it helps for us to get the problems outside of our expertise solved by people that are actually experts in that area.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so explain real quick. You'd mentioned it kind of there, but what are the different parts of your program, or what's a part of Human Predator Pack Mule?
Yeah. So there's the DIY program, and that's essentially, it's all kind of, all of our names are based on different hunting aspects of hunting. So DIY is like you sign up, I send you a questionnaire, and it helps me dial in on where you might need to start with your program. And then you just kind of go at your own. And if you really get stuck, you can ask some questions. You can DM us in the app, but it's mostly do it yourself kind of thing. And for people with budgetary concerns, or which like are pretty dialed in with training, but just want a good program, that's great for them. Backcountry Ready is our flagship program, and it's a customizable program. So it is one program that most of our folks do. But the great thing about that is those folks go through testing, and then we help them customize their path through the program. So these are the exercises that you should do based on your mobility constraints, and this is where you should start based on your strength. Like for example, in this training phase, we have 3 optional strength days. So people that need more strength training get more strength training, but people that need more conditioning or are already strong enough focus on the aerobic development that we do. And then it also guides you through the mobility exercises that might be most impactful for you. And it's just a really dialed in science-backed training program. And then, like I mentioned, you get the support from Jordan and I, where we're checking in on all the workouts. You're hearing from Jordan every week. And we're always there to take a call or to chat to make sure that you're dialed in and get what you need. And then the fully guided program is completely individualized. So from everything to what equipment you have access to obviously, like I mentioned, they go through testing. And if you, like, for example, I'm helping two of my clients that were in Human Predator, that were in Backcountry Ready, have elevated to fully guided because they're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro next summer. And then the year after that, or no, next winter. And then the year after that, they're going to Nepal to hunt blue sheep. And so we're taking a very long view approach to that. And we're getting more specific with the strength and the conditioning work that they need to do to be prepared for that. But if someone, just wants a more personalized approach, or really wants directed training just for them, fully guided is the answer. So,
yeah, which makes sense and aligns with the names that you have as far as it goes with hunting. So that makes it easy.
Way more communication with me. So, like, for example, I send out for those folks, I send out a daily readiness questionnaire. So it assesses sleep, fatigue, and motivation, and it helps me kind of understand where they're at. And if I need to reach out and say, hey, what's going on here, I do that. And it also helps me to see trends a little bit better, so I can even get more dialed in with customizing their programming.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And what was it last year that we had put together well, you did most of it, but put together the email list as far as getting ready for first Western hunt. Yeah. Which I thought was a really cool idea. So do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to there wasn't. So you and I both, grew up in Pennsylvania, and we've both traveled west to hunt quite a bit. And, I started getting a lot of questions about that kind of stuff, both from a training standpoint and from like a prepping to go hunt standpoint. And I just saw it as a gap where it's like a lot of the other training stuff or even the information is geared towards people that are already out west, or doesn't put it in the context of someone that lives in Virginia or lives in New York and wants to go out west to hunt. And so I saw a gap there. And I knew, from the training side of things, I knew what to do. I know what we have access to in the East and what we don't, and what we might need to prepare for and what gaps there might be. And then from like the hunting and the e-scouting and all of that kind of standpoint, I knew that you were dialed in on that kind of stuff. And then, so it just came to me as like, well, why don't Beau and I put together an email series that solves this problem for a lot of Eastern folks that want to go out west and hunt, because there wasn't a resource that existed that could help people that way.
Yeah, in a simple way that is something. They're in bite-sized chunks. So every day you're getting an email for, I think it's 13 or 14 days that you're getting those emails that come through, but they're in bite-sized chunks, and it doesn't make it seem like this just overtaxing thing as far as being able to plan, whether it's your first Western hunt. And I would argue that it's just as valuable for people that have done it in the past as well. Actually, just as valuable in my opinion. And anything down from the fitness side of it to the preparation to making that experience as good as possible in a way that, again, that's not overwhelming. And I think that's really important. And I wanted to go through those things here in this episode, talk about it, and then encourage everyone to go sign up to get those emails. So then you have the notes and that written out, so you can listen to the podcast or watch it here and then go back and you're able to review those notes. You can save those emails and look at it at any time, which is cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's a great resource to save. And like you were thinking, it's like, how can we put this in the most digestible form right away? So you can get one thing, take action on it, and also save it at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And so basically it's as I put it here, the 13 things that you should know before your first Western hunt that would get the ball rolling and get you going. And with one of the first things that you had mentioned, and this is something that has been a big part of you from day one, and one of your reasoning, I believe, from starting Human Predator Pack Mule, is trying to put out information of when it comes to hunting fitness that is actually helping people and for the longevity and making sure that they're able to hunt, well into the later years of their life and be able to do that at a high level for a long period of time. And the first one's, called the hunting fitness industry is bullshit. So what do you mean by that?
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of a sex sells kind of deal, right? I think there are some knowledge gaps that come from other training companies in the hunting fitness industry. I hope there are knowledge gaps. I guess I'll say that. I'm not necessarily just going to talk shit, but I hope there are knowledge gaps, because otherwise it's sinister, and I don't like that even more. But it's really based on, there's no physiological principles behind what a lot of these folks are doing. And it's really just hard workouts that don't really build on each other, don't have any layered aspect to developing fitness, which is like, you need certain aspects of fitness before you can develop others. And so it's really just, there's a lot of really, really good marketing that isn't backed up with any kind of science-based training. And that is why I started Human Predator Pack Mule. I was getting ready for my first Western hunt, and I've been I'm 38 now, I'll be 39 in April this year. And I've been a strength and conditioning coach for about 20 years. And so I'm open to learning. Like, that's what's helped me progress so much in my career. And so I go looking for things where people might know more than I do. And I went looking through the hunting fitness industry, and there wasn't, and that bothered me. Because I was like, man, this is all just stupid shit it's like, I call it CrossFit with guns. And if you like CrossFit, that's fine. You can like to do that, but it doesn't prepare you to do anything. And So I was like, well, I guess I got to do this by myself, and I'll go pull on the other resources and the physiological knowledge that I already have from being a strength and conditioning coach for about 20 years and having a master's degree in exercise science, and working with NFL players, tier 1 operators, backcountry hunters, people that climb mountains, all kinds of shit. So I was like, I know enough. I'll put this together myself. And so I did it, and I started documenting shit on social media, and then guys started raising their hands and say, hey, and this makes sense. And so I was like, okay, so people are getting it. It's time to do something with this and help more people and, start a business around it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are some things like, I guess diving into that a little bit more, some things about some of and I don't want to go too deep on it because we've done that in some other episodes, but just some cliff notes of like, all right, what are some things that are common misconceptions in it? You talked about the CrossFitting aspect to it, but like, what are, if you had 3 things that you could name that were kind of common misconceptions with it?
Yeah. So I think people think they need way more high intensity training than they do. That's number one. I think that they don't apply strength training in the proper context. So either it's in part of some kind of Metcon, so you're not really developing strength, or you're doing the wrong kind of strength training where you're doing bodybuilding, power building type training when there's an aspect of max strength and stuff that we need to train for, but mostly we need to train to build relative strength, which is our max strength in relation to our body weight, and we need to build strength endurance. And so we do too much high intensity conditioning. We don't strength train in the right ways, and we don't spend enough time developing aerobic capacity. And those are the 3 biggest mistakes that I've seen in those programs, and I've seen other hunters make. And it's especially important for people from the East because, lifestyle is different out West for sure. Like people are like, it's one of the interesting things that like you go to Bozeman, Montana, and I understand that like everybody calls it Los Angeles, but if you go to Bozeman, Montana, there aren't any fat people. They're not there. It's because, first of all, like, yes, you could look at the socioeconomic part of it, but also people do shit. And it is not like that in the East. Culture is very different. And so we need to be more diligent in developing our aerobic capacity and going out and spending time doing that. And so you have to build a training time for it. But those are the 3 main things that I see that people make big mistakes with.
Gotcha. So what would you say if I were to say that hunters were fitter back in the day?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things where we romanticize the past, right? And we say, well, my pop could carry out 2 deer on each shoulder after hunting all day and walked 100 miles and all this kind of shit. And it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe, but one of the things that we have to remember is that life is different now. Like lifestyles are way different. We spend way more time sitting. We're just not as active. And so you also have to look at, we know more now, right? So it's like, we know, like, for example, it's like you have access to a truck, right? And we're both from Pennsylvania. So why would you ride a horse and buggy when you have access to a truck? You know what I mean? It's like, we know more now, And so we know that taking care of your joints in the right way, we know that strength training, we know that dedicated aerobic capacity training, all of these things promote your longevity. So you could sit there and say, well, hunters were fitter back in the day, or he just walked, or he just did this. And it's like, first of all, you don't know how ready he actually was. And second of all, it's like, if you have access to all the things that we have access now, and we know, why wouldn't you use those things? It'd be foolish not to, right? So, yeah. It's so I don't know that we have to look at lifestyle was different, but also we have a greater knowledge base now.
An example that you had given was, 100 years ago, people would average 18,000 steps in a day. And that is not the case now. The average American is 5,000 to 7,000 steps per day, which is a lot less. So you look at that alone and just the amount of movement back then, they didn't need to focus as much, whether it was their jobs or just lifestyle or the conveniences that we have now with vehicles and really everything that we have convenience wise makes it so we're not doing as much. So we have to really put focus on doing those things in a different way and training to be able to be at that capacity. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that's things like activity has just dropped exponentially, so we have to focus on doing it because, we don't have, even if we don't have as many, not even just manual labor jobs, but just jobs where people are active. And then you think about what people do is they sit at computers and they do it for long periods of time, and then they don't get up and move. And even building activity into your day is a huge aspect of this too. Like, don't get me wrong, like getting your step count up is going to be huge. One of the jokes that I always use is like, guys don't want to talk about their step count or like increasing their activity level, but they want to be able to walk all day up a mountain. Well, if you can't walk all day around your flat ground, like what makes you think you're going to walk up a mountain after an elk, So it's like all of that matters for sure.
Yeah, I'm very guilty of that. When I'm home and I'm editing on my computer and stuff, I get so ingrained in what I'm doing. I'll look and it'll be like, let's look at today here. This is going to be embarrassing most likely, but it is 1:30 in the afternoon and I have 1,831 steps.
Yeah.
So like there's an example right there.
We have to be diligent with it. I mean, setting alarms helps, like building it into the structure of your day of taking breaks to take walks and stuff like that. It absolutely helps. And so increasing your activity level and getting back to close to like even what we were 3 generations ago would be hugely helpful for you. And I think people are starting to see the value in that. So it's not as tough of a sell, but like for sure, activity level is going to be a good baseline.
Yeah. And I think, you think about that and say someone's averaging 5,000 to 7,000 steps a day. I would argue it's probably not a good idea to start with your goal being 18,000 right off the bat of slowly moving your way up through it. And one of the things I've learned so much from you over this time, and we'll talk about it even a little bit more here later, but is the consistency aspect of just doing things regularly versus trying to have these goals that you may not be able to hit right away and it taking time. And it's I feel like that's in every element of your programming is just built through things in time.
Yeah. I mean, everything takes time. And that's, I mean, I don't know if you want to jump into that, but I think
actually that was the next thing. I didn't even realize that.
Very good.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that. Perfect.
Well done. The time is the biggest, I guess that, you asked about the 3 mistakes and I kind of knew time was coming, so I didn't bring it up, but like, not giving yourself enough time is one of the biggest mistakes that Easterners make, and truthfully, I think the reason that the first word in the name of my business is human is because those are the first concerns that we have to take care of. Right. So think about it this way. Even if you have a very long hunting season, let's say you're an Easterner and you're blessed enough to have 2 hunting trips this year that total, let's say a month, right? That's still only 1/12 of your year. You have all of these other aspects of your life that are important to you, and consistent training year round is not only going to help you prepare for that month even more, it's going to help you live a better life. And so we should all be training year round. Now, to the varying degrees, like we don't do the same exact thing year round in Human Predator Pack Mule, nor should most people. Like we periodize our training, and there should be times when it's harder and times when it's easier. Like when we come out of hunting season, that period from like mid-November to early January, it's pretty fun. We lift weights, we do our aerobic capacity work, and we do it in a way that's like easy to check the box. It's not nearly as strenuous as what we do through the spring and into the summer, but it's consistent and it's always there. And it allows you to maintain some of the fitness that you need before we start to rebuild and build on top of the base that we already have. And so, but what I've seen is a lot of guys, they'll wait until late spring, early summer, like, well, I got an elk hunt in September, it's time to start getting ready. It's like, bud, you can do a lot in 16 weeks. Don't get me wrong, but you're not going to be where you need to be to go out and have the best possible. Not only you will make decisions differently, right? So let's say you see the elk go over the ridge, you look at your map, you're like, that's now another 5 miles, or that's now another 3 miles, or whatever it might be. You're going to sit there, and because you won't be as confident in your body, you won't make the same kind of decision. You won't say, okay, well, we can move camp to this ridge and we can be able to be on them the next day if we do that. But if you look at that and you know that you don't have the fitness, you're going to make a way different decision, and you're not going to give yourself the opportunities that you might need to be able to make a play on whatever you're hunting. And then second part of that, you just want to enjoy yourself as well. Like, it sucks when you're not in shape. And one of the things that time gives you is the ability to go multiple days without totally bonking out. And that's one of the problems that comes with the type of training that I was talking about before. Wrong kind of strength training, wrong kind of conditioning, no aerobic capacity work. So you have no recovery system. So that's why you can see the guys that like have done the 45-minute burners in the gym. They go out on day one, they march up that hill and they're doing just fine. And by day two, they're fucking toast, because they just did not have what they needed to recover from all of that work. And it took too many resources from them. So,
yeah. And I, 100%. And then I think too, an argument of, well, you know, I'm mentally tough, or I can grind through it. And there's people that can to an extent. But the thing is, why do you want to do, even if you could, why do you want to do that? Because it's going to make it more miserable. And I was just asked this. I was a guest on a podcast the other day, and someone was asking me about fitness and going out west. And they're like, how fit do you really need to be? And I was like, said, well, I've never wished that I was in worse shape. Like,
for sure, dude. Yeah.
I always feel like there's work to be done, or I could be better in a certain way or whatever. But like what you just said about going over that next ridge, or it's day 5 of your rut whitetail hunt, and you've got to walk in, and you know the right way to access where you're going to hunt at. You should go down the stream a while, up the steep drainage, so your scent's blowing down, and you climb up in there, and you've done it for 4 days in a row now, and you're sitting all day and you're wore out. And it's like that ability to just be like, that's what I'm doing, versus coming up with an excuse on why not to do that, is huge. And I think that comes down to that consistency that gives enough time to prepare for that and be able to be in those shoes. And for me, I've just learned through now 10 years of Western hunting, and more than that in whitetail, the stuff helps so much. I'm a huge believer in it.
It keeps you clear. And that's you brought up the mental toughness stuff, and I think a lot of people will be like, what do you mean when I say this? But like, I think mental toughness is so overemphasized in our industry, because it's like, if you look at what mental toughness is from a research perspective, and the way that it's broken down is like, it's your ability to stick through a task with discomfort. Great. An ability that we all need, right? But the hyper focus on it, first of all, it's ego based. It's like, even the question of like, how fit do you need to be? It's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, why wouldn't you be as fit as you possibly could? Do you want to suffer, or do you want to go show people how tough you are, or what is it? But then, like, you have to think about it in the terms of, okay, it's the ability to stick with a task through discomfort. What if it's the wrong fucking task? What if you're doing the wrong thing, but because you're so focused on being tough, you don't keep your eyes up and do something better, that might cost you less energy, that might put you in a better position. It's just, I think it's so silly sometimes. I really do. But, and we work on mental skills. We work on all that kind of stuff in Human Predator Pack Mule, but like, it's overemphasized. I'm not saying de-emphasize it, but I'm saying it's overemphasized.
Yep. That makes sense. And now transitioning a little bit, what is the one thing that every hunter fears when they go out west? Yeah.
I mean, it's bears for sure, because we don't have those in the East, but it's pack out. Like, everybody gets so overworked up about the pack out. And, it's one of those things like, yeah, you gotta be able to pack in and you gotta be able to pack out, but then it makes people hyper focus on that. And then what they end up start doing is like, they either progress in weight too quickly, or they use too much weight when they're rucking. And it does not improve their fitness. It makes them worse at it, right? Because when you look at rucking, to get ready for packing in or packing out, the main goal is efficiency. So you want the body to carry the weight well. So first of all, you need to know how to carry the weight, which is in the middle of your back and tight to your spine. Like when you're training, when you have yourself set up to pack in and we have yourself set up to pack out, you want those conditions as much as possible. But then also, like, you need to be able to maintain your posture. You need to be able to breathe well. And if you set yourself up with too much weight or you go too fast, too soon, you start to create bad habits which are inefficient. So if you're not breathing well, you're going to fatigue way faster. If you're carrying your weight like shit, you're going to fatigue way faster. And you're also going to put a lot of stress on your spine and the rest of your joints that you don't need to put on them. And so, like, we know from research that diminishing returns really start to show about 30% of body weight, 30 to 35% if you're carrying that over a long period of time. Now, then we layer on top of that, we know that around 50 pounds for most people, like if you're consistently carrying more than 50 pounds all the time, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're going to start to develop that inefficiency. You're going to start to put too much stress on your joints. And so we train most of the time, I kind of call it day pack plus, which would be about 20% of your body weight for most people. So if you're an average size human being, it might be a little bit more than that for some people. But if you look at like what your average day pack weighs, you know, it's going to be what, 25, 30 pounds, maybe something like that. And so, you know, I'm 195 pounds. So my 20% of my body weight, somewhere between 35 and 40 pounds. Yep. And so if we're rucking consistently with that, you will build up the resiliency that you need to carry your day pack all the time. And then if you're working on your relative strength, you're working on your conditioning, when it's time to pack out, you will have the smoke. You will be just fine. But the consistency in building the volume and being efficient under load is what's going to do that for you. Now, like, we'll do high intensity continuous step ups with more weight than that. Like during the summer, I'll do stuff with 80 or 100 pounds on my back in very short workouts in very controlled environments and only a couple times just to acclimate to the weight and to get my legs what they need. And then I put it down. But like the consistently rucking with these obnoxious amounts of weight just set you up for failure.
Well, I will say that when I first started training with you, that was one of the things I questioned probably the most of like, man, I feel like I'm not carrying a whole lot of heavy weight. And then, but as I've learned, you know, this past fall, I was a part of 2 pack outs of bulls and, you know, trained the program that you had said. I've never really carried more than 40 pounds or so on my back while we were rucking. And then, like you said, the step ups and stuff had more weight on, but I never felt bad really at all. Like it wasn't, we built it up to be this big thing. And that was an uncommon year where I was able to have, you know, 2 pack outs in a week and a half time frame or whatever it was. And yeah, I still got up the next morning to be able to go glass and continue to hunt. And it was like, now I will say a couple days later, I started feeling it a little bit more, but we're all going, I mean, a pack out is a pack out and that's what it is. But it was great to feel that of like, okay, I built it myself up enough through training and getting used to carrying weight that when duty calls to have to carry a little bit more, it wasn't like this thing I've never done before.
Oh, for sure. And I think in a lot of times in those instances, it's remembering that there's no rush. Take your time. Like you don't have to fly. And also take the time to make sure that your pack is set up right before you put it on. Like, Is the weight going to be distributed the way that it needs to be? Do you have it tight down to your spine? Are you carrying more than you need to? And like, I think for most guys, like on a pack out, depending on how big you are, but like 80 pounds is probably going to be enough. If you start, I've carried out over 100-pound packs and I shouldn't have done it. It was stupid. And I could have gotten hurt very badly. But you don't need to. I mean, if you got sometimes like, I mean, listen, a moose quarter is huge, right? And you might have to carry that way a lot more weight sometimes. But like, if you stick around the 80-pound mark on your pack outs, like you're probably going to be in pretty good shape, 80 to 100. But if you start creeping up, it's like, then you have to pause and ask yourself, what am I really doing? And you have to consider terrain. Like for me, when I did that really heavy pack out, I was going out over deadfall and blowdown and all this kind of shit. And it was so dumb. So dumb. I got so lucky that I didn't snap my ankle or something silly. So, I mean, getting the weight set up right and making sure that you're not carrying more than you need to is also really important to consider.
Yeah, the first pack out I did of elk in 2019 I was like, oh, it's mostly downhill because I was up high. My truck was downhill over a couple miles. That was the worst to do.
Absolutely.
I had a hind quarter on there, bone in, had the leg, the hoof, everything on there. Didn't trim any of that off. Had the head, the cape, everything on there. I was figuring it's probably, 110, 115 pounds with all the other gear that I had. And my knee still isn't right after doing that. Like that was a big costly mistake that I'd had. And it's like, now I've figured it out. Like even when we were hunting, in Montana this past year, it was with me and my cousin, we'd split it up and it's like, all right, we're getting a bull out of here. It's going to be at least 2 loads. And that was with also taking better care of cutting off the stuff we didn't need to carry out and spending a little bit more time on that prep. And it was like, all right, that felt good. Like that was manageable to be able to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing is like, are there going to be instances when it feels like you need to rush? Like maybe you're running out of time or something like that. Sure. But like a lot of times we have more time than we give ourselves, and don't let it scare you. If you do consistent preparation, you'll be fine. If you just start rucking in June with a bajillion pounds, you're probably not going to be fine. So start now and start consistently training and you'll be fine.
All right, so I'm going to transition here. Mobility training.
Yep.
Let's hear a little bit about that. Something that's been a big learning thing for me.
Well, I mean, healthy joints are what keep us moving, right? So, like, if you think about it, when does the quality of your life start to diminish a lot? Well, first of all, with your decision making, like if you have a horrible significant other and you need to get out of that relationship, you should probably do that. You know what I mean? So it's like making sure that you're doing all those other things. But like when you start to have pain, when you start to have joint pain, or when a joint isn't moving the way that you want it to, or it should, it starts to detract a lot from your life. It detracts from your attention. It detracts from everything. And so taking care of your joints is one of the best things that we can do. So we focus a lot on mobility because of the human is the first word in the name. Second, movement capacity and movement efficiency is huge for saving energy. So if your joints move well, all of your movements cost you less. So think about, I'll give you an example. And I'm actually writing an uphill and downhill training guide for hunters. So that'll be out soon. But think about marching up a hill, right? If your ankles don't dorsiflex, which means come towards your shin as well as they could, your gait's going to change. You're going to swing your leg more to get up that hill, or you're going to have to drive your knee higher or whatever. Your movement is going to get inefficient. Each step is going to cost you more energy. So the best movement capacity we have, the more energy we save. So if we look at like what our biggest energy savings are, it's movement capacity, relative strength, aerobic capacity. And so they're all very important. So as hunters, one of the reasons that we focus so much on movement capacity and mobility is because of energy savings. But then also you have to consider like, you think you're just hiking in and hiking out and all that kind of stuff, but you think about all of the things that you do while you're hunting. You got to step over logs. Like you got to fucking go out behind the tent and squat and take a dump, or like you might not have a chair to sit on. And so you're going to squat around your jet boil while you're making your coffee or whatever it is. There are just so many more movement demands when we go out to hunt that we don't have in our everyday life, that if we don't have the joint mobility for, it's either going to cost us more energy than it should, or it's going to set us up to get hurt because we're going to have to move in a funky way. So think about it this way. If you don't have like the stability in one hip, so the ability to maintain position, and the mobility in another hip while you step over a log, let's say you have weight on your back, even if it's only 40 pounds. Let's say you have a heavy day pack that day. That weight shifts on you because you couldn't step efficiently. Well, you just set yourself up in a bad position to either get hurt or just, again, cost yourself more energy than you need to do. So it's a super important aspect of training, both from a human health standpoint and from a hunting standpoint.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And even think about like the awkward positions you find yourself in on a stalk, or you need to sit there in an ambush position and you're in these different positions. It's really difficult to make it extremely comfortable, but being able to be in a way that you can shift positions relatively easy and be able to get up and not be all locked up, and having those things like that to me all helps so much. And knock on wood, I haven't had ankle problems in the last few years, which that was always the joke of Justin, my one camera guy, would call me. He said I had bitch ass ankles because I'd roll them all the time. And that's something that I've focused on, the mobility side of it, and just making sure that I'm practicing with it, and I'm not always training with super stiff boots and things to try to get my ankles stronger and have them be able to move a little bit more freely, so that it's not such a rigid, roll when I do have an issue.
Oh, for sure. I mean, talking about the stock thing and everything, like the first antelope I shot at, I army crawled probably 300 or 400 yards to get the shot. And then I had to lay there for, I don't know, better part of an hour. And so think if like, when you lay your legs down and your feet are rotated out, that takes hip external rotation, right? And so if you don't have good hip external rotation to even just lay prone and wait for a shot, or, if you can't extend your spine the right way, like you have to lay there, it's going to wear you out. And either you're going to be inaccurate or you're going to be like, fuck this. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to stay there. And so it's just, it plays into every part of hunting, whether you realize it or not. Agreed.
All right. So 3 things that help you fight altitude sickness. Now there's more than 3, but let's start with that. Some big things that you have control over throughout the year.
I think that's the biggest thing, is like, what can you control the most, and that is developing your aerobic system. Because there are a few things that are going to happen when you go to altitude and you're not adapted for it. So your heart rate's going to increase. And if you don't utilize oxygen as much as possible, and if you haven't done the aerobic training to increase your actual blood volume and maintain it, then your heart rate will increase even more. And so that's going to increase your body heat. And that's when you're going to start to feel the effects of these things. So the more efficient you are with oxygen, the lower you have your resting heart rate, the better you're going to do when it comes to altitude and the increased heart rate that you have no control over. So developing your aerobic system so your body utilizes oxygen as well as possible is going to be step number 1. Step number 2 that plays right in line with that is hydration. If you're not hydrated, you decrease your blood volume, right? And then your heart rate has to increase even more. And then your body heat increases even more. And then not only do you fatigue faster, but also you set yourself up to get altitude sickness even more. So aerobic training, hydration, and then rest. I mean, being well slept is going to be another one of those things, because again, if you're underslept, the first thing that takes a hit is your cardiorespiratory system. And so your heart rate increases. All of the things that lead to altitude sickness, you set yourself up for. And I mean, I know not everybody has access to this. And obviously I live in the West right now, but like, if you can fly, because it's so much easier to be rested, to stay hydrated, and to, even manage your training up to the point before you go a little bit better. So if you can fly, West, fly. But if you're going to drive, I really recommend figuring out how to plan your trip to give yourself enough time to stop and sleep, and to make sure that you're not so focused on hammer down and getting there that you don't drink because you don't want to stop and piss and all of that kind of stuff. So like, you need the consistent aerobic training, you need to stay hydrated, and you need rest. Those are going to be your frontline weapons against altitude sickness.
And it's funny you say that. At the time of recording this, the podcast just came out this week with Cliff Gray, who's a elk hunting guide, just Western guide for a long time, super well-versed backcountry hunter. He talked about the people that he sees that comes from the East out West. And he's like, one of the biggest things is telling them not to drive through the night. And even if they're swapping people to do that because they show up, they're not rested, they go want to hike right in and hunt, and giving themselves enough time and having that rest. I've run into it. I've been that person that's with 3 people deciding we're going to drive 38 hours straight. Terrible idea. All of that is terrible. Please understand that, because there are situations where it makes it difficult to, get an elk back if you're flying, and there's ways around it. Don't get me wrong. Or maybe you want to drive for whatever reason, but making sure that you are well rested and giving yourself enough time. You need to give yourself more time when you're driving versus flying. 100% agree with that. And the other thing, like when you're talking about the hydration side of it, when you're driving, you're typically drinking more caffeine because you're trying to stay awake. And that's dehydrating you and making it worse.
Well, I mean, the good news is like, what we've learned from some research that's been relatively new is that coffee is just as hydrating as water. The caffeine, the amount of caffeine in coffee doesn't dehydrate you. Like I don't know if that's true. Like if you're pounding Monsters or something like that, but for coffee, you're probably okay if you're drinking coffee and tea. But if you're hammering Monsters and shit like that, like you're probably setting yourself up for failure. But I think the most thing is just like guys don't want to stop and piss, so they just don't drink very much, and it sets you up for failure. And I get, man, like you only have so much vacation time, and like you have a family to get back to, and you have things to do, and I understand wanting to rush out there, but if you can at least plan one night to stop and sleep and you're driving, do it. It's going to make a world of difference.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And there's also, as far as altitude goes, I had done a film a while back called High Altitude, where I suffered from altitude sickness on a mule deer hunt, and that film was more educational than entertaining. So if anybody wants to go look at some other things that you can do and look at, you can watch that over on my YouTube channel, again called High Altitude there. But moving along, all right, another thing, strength versus cardio when you're preparing for it. That seems to be another thing that's between people that are getting ready for it. There's like, all right, either people train too much on strength or too much on cardio, and through doing your program for, again, going on 5 years now, there's a good balance in between both there. So explain a little bit about that, the optimal balance.
You need both. I mean, that's one of the reasons that we test strength, you need both, because relative strength, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, is one of the components of work capacity that's going to help you save energy. So if you're strong relative to your body weight, each movement you make costs you less energy. So it's important. So everyone that says like, well, you just need to hike more, it's like, sure, you could go hike more and do better than you would have otherwise. But is that optimal? No. So strength training, and then especially strength endurance, like some of the things that we do with high intensity continuous training, like we talked about with the step ups, and eustress training, which allows us to train to use that strength over time, is really important. And so, if you're not hitting our strength standards, which is, can you do a simple one is, can you deadlift rack pull or hex bar deadlift 1.5 times your body weight for 5 good reps? You need to get stronger. Your relative strength isn't good enough. But then you need to take that and use it and do strength endurance work to do that. Now, at the same rate, we look at like, what are the other aspects of work capacity, and aerobic capacity is one of them. So that's why we spend so much time in zone 1 and zone 2. You need both. It's not a mutually exclusive thing. It's just like, where's the balance for you? And what's gonna be your biggest limiting factor right now? So if you're a runner and you have a great aerobic base, but you're fucking paper thin and you're weak, like your limiting factor is probably going to be strength. So you probably need to spend some more time strength training and maintain the aerobic development that you've done through your running. So there's a balance there depending on the person. One of the problems with dudes is we like big muscles, and we like the immediate gratification that we get from doing something like strength training, and we're typically better at it. And so you have to drop your ego about some things. Like one of the things that I had to do is like, man, I've been about 205 pounds since I graduated high school. And over the past couple of years, I was like, I just really realized that being that big is not doing for me what I need it to do. And so I lost 15 pounds. And so now I bounce between 190 and 195. And it comes the same thing with strength training. It's like, yes, you like it. Is it really doing for you what you need to do over time? So if you're already strong, 1 to 2 strength training sessions per week is likely going to be enough for you. And keep in mind that you can maintain the muscle mass and the strength that you've gained over time with a quarter to a third of the amount of volume that it took to build it. So let's say if you were lifting 3 days per week, you could lift 1 and maintain what you have while you do the other things that you need to do. So you need both. It's just what proportions.
Interesting. Yeah. And I know for myself, if you gave me a choice of strength training or zone 1 and zone 2 work, I'm going to pick strength training every time.
Of course. Yeah, it's way more fun. I'm not going to deny that. It's way more fun.
Yeah, it's I'll tell you what, during this winter with it being pretty rough and I'd be down in the gym doing some of the zone 1, zone 2 stuff. When I can, I like doing it outside, but it's like, all right, I'm going on the treadmill of doing that for 60 minutes is like painful at times because it's boring.
I agree. And that's why I like having this 700-acre ranch that I live on that has cattle trails. I just go out and do my thing. But it's for sure, it's not super fun. And that's one of the things is like, I'm not here to sell you sexy. I'm here to sell you what works and what's going to keep you hunting this year and until you're 80 years old, and this is the stuff that's going to do it.
Yeah. All right. So the type of strength training that you like or that you recommend as far as Western hunting.
Yeah. So, I mean, we kind of rotate different things throughout the year, but like we kind of mentioned, we have to think about what we need to develop. And mostly we need strength endurance. So we need aerobic capacity in our fast twitch muscle fibers so that we can access them as we continue to move and fatigue. And then we need slow twitch muscle fibers that are also have endurance. And so we focus on things like tempo strength training, which develops our slow twitch muscle fibers. It keeps them under tension for a long time and then gives them short rest. And so what happens is they're deprived of oxygen. And that makes them get bigger, right? And so then that allows us to improve their quality, but also put more endurance machinery inside of them. And then, like I said, we just need our fast twitch muscles to have more endurance. And so we train them for that. And so those are going to be if you didn't push your max strength, if you did those things and you weren't strong enough, it likely would still push your max strength and your relative strength. But for most of us that are strong enough, we need to focus on those things. It's kind of like a meet in the middle, right? Like everybody needs to do this shit if you're going to hunt because you need to be able to express your strength over time. Like I always say that backcountry hunting or mountain hunting is a strength endurance event because you have to carry loads over time throughout the day and for multiple days. And so you have to develop strength endurance. That's the most important type of strength for hunting.
Yeah, the tempo stuff, that is something that I always overestimate my ability when I first start doing it again, or it becomes up in the programming of like, oh, I'm going to grab, these dumbbells to do the tempo, split squats. That's exactly what I was thinking of, split squats. And then it's like, I'm like going back over to the rack, dropping weights, like ego is hitting me hard. I'm like, damn, this feels like nothing, but it's hard.
Well, you won't get bored doing it. That's for sure. You'll like, I always joke with people, like if you, by the third set, you're not making bargains with yourself and cursing my name, you're not doing it right. Like you should be, it should take you something to get through it for sure.
Yes, I feel that every time. The eustress training, and I want to again bring this up again. We're hitting on a lot of this stuff pretty quickly, so I'd highly recommend going back and in addition to checking out Todd's stuff, the other podcasts we had done in the past, we really dove deep into a lot of these subjects when it came to with getting ready and getting in shape to being out west. But next thing is the endurance side of it. Some may call it cardio, some call it conditioning. Like what I I see people talk about, maybe you should be running or you should be rucking all the time or you should do this. What is your thoughts on cardio and the best way to do that?
I mean, we need to spend as much time on our feet as we can. I mean, it's also good to have breaks from being on your feet. But as the winter wears on and the spring starts to come, like, we need to be on our feet. That's going to be what's going to prepare us most for the West. So hiking, rucking, running are going to be, and even like, for a lot of times, like guys in the Midwest, like even at home in Pennsylvania, we at least have access to terrain, right? Like we can go up and downhill. There's a lot of guys in the Midwest that don't have access to that. And so the stair climber and the incline treadmill, as awful and boring as they are going to be your friend. And then from there, we want to think about two things, mostly aerobic capacity. So like if you lifted and just did aerobic capacity training, you'd be pretty good. But we also layer aerobic power on top of that. So aerobic capacity is how long can your aerobic system generate energy. Aerobic power is how quickly can it do it. And so we want to bracket both of those things. So you do need high intensity training. I'm not poo-pooing it, but we need a lot more aerobic capacity training, and we need aerobic power training put at the right places and in the right doses. And so, we focus mostly on aerobic capacity, but then we try to push. Here's a simple way to explain it. Maybe you've seen me do this. You've seen me do this I call it the conditioning house, right? And so we want to build the biggest house that we can. So we want the foundation to be as low into the ground as we can. And that's our resting heart rate. You decrease your resting heart rate, both by managing your stress and taking care of lifestyle factors, but also with aerobic capacity training. The ceiling of the first floor is your aerobic threshold. So above that threshold, you start to recruit more anaerobic energy. So that use your anaerobic energy system more. And so that means you'll start to fatigue faster because your anaerobic energy system can't produce energy for as long, right? And then above that, the second story ceiling is your anaerobic threshold. So once you're above that, you're predominantly using your anaerobic energy system to produce energy. And so you'll fatigue much, much faster. So what we want to do is we want to put our resting heart rate as low as we possibly can. We want the first floor as high as we can possibly make it. And we want the second floor as high as we possibly make it. And then you have your max heart rate, which oftentimes we want that high, but as you age and oftentimes as you get fitter, your max heart rate will come down. So we're really worried about those first three. Right. And so that's why aerobic capacity makes up the bulk of everything, because we can move all three of those things with aerobic capacity training. And then we layer some of the other stuff on top to get that first floor to move up. And then we get that second floor to move up. Right. And so that's really what we do. And then within that, we want to be on our feet as much as possible. I really like running if people can run. The problem is that a lot of people start running way too hard and with way too much volume. And so that's when people start to get hurt, or they just don't improve their fitness to the same degree. Sometimes it's painfully slow and you need to do run-walk intervals and you're walking a lot, but to keep yourself in zone 1 and zone 2 and to run, not only it seems that you improve your ability to develop your aerobic system much faster than other means. And it has carryover to other aspects of exercise, but also you build tissue tolerance in things like your feet and your calves and your legs, which means they become more resilient. And then you also have more spring, which saves energy, which each step that you're not running, right? So if you're walking, each walking step is going to cost you less energy. So between the balance of that and rucking and hiking would be the great things to do. Now, once you're efficient under load with rucking, you don't need to ruck as much until you need to specifically get ready for your hunt. But those would be the three things that I think people should do most. And then if you don't have access to train to hike, you got to get on the stair climber and you got to get on the incline treadmill.
Yeah, and I think it's been amazing to me to see when you do say zone 1, zone 2 training, and you're doing it a couple times a week for an extended period of time, how much you're able to do, more capacity, higher speeds in those same heart rate categories. It's, even like the walk run intervals are some of my favorite thing. I don't know why that's something I've never done before with you. There was either like I had to run and like I'd be dying the first 10 times I'd try to run, or it was walking and there was no really in between. But doing that has helped build yourself up to get running I love that. And I think it helps so much. And even with my knees and everything else of building yourself up to it, that walk run intervals has been great for that.
Yeah. And I think we're training ourselves to be efficient with using fat as fuel. And it's one of the reasons that I think, well, that's why running slow and going slow works so well, because you get efficient. So the more efficient you are, the easier it is to keep your heart rate down while you go fast, right? And then that's also the reason that we do such long sessions and we build up to long sessions. Like right now, our Saturday session, if people have time for it. Now, I want to make the caveat that, like, if you only have 45 minutes, absolutely use your 45 minutes and do what you have. But like, we program for 90 minutes or longer on Saturdays right now at the end of the week, because long duration sessions make us even better at utilizing fat for fuel by staying in those aerobic zones for longer. Like, you have to stress it to get even better at doing it. So like, my run, walk, hike last Saturday was 2 hours. This Saturday will be 2.5. And then we'll work up into the summer, like when we'll all be out doing shit anyway, to going for like multiple hours. Like, you don't start to see you stop seeing a physiological benefit, I believe, after 4 hours. But that's not to say that you shouldn't do all day sessions, all day hikes, all that kind of stuff to prepare you mentally, and also to understand how you might want to fuel yourself and eat as you hike and hunt and all that kind of stuff. That experience is great, but you don't really get the true physiological benefit like past 4 hours, I don't think.
Well, yeah. And I'll say for people that are big whitetail hunters and everything this time of year, especially, you're out shed hunting or scouting, you're hitting two birds with one stone there. I mean, that's what I do on the weekends for it, is typically I'm out scouting, looking for stuff for hunting season, but you're also at the same time getting that longer Saturday workout there.
Absolutely. And if you can check more than one box at the same time, you absolutely should. Absolutely.
All right, so Backcountry Nutrition. This is one I definitely think that gets overlooked quite a bit when it comes to going out west. So, what are some thoughts you have, some highlights on Backcountry Nutrition?
I think you have to figure out like what your balance is between what you want to carry and how much you need to eat. So like, we typically do like the pound per day thing of like, it's like 160 calories per pound. And so that'll set you up for like 2,500 calories per day. You're likely going to be underfed when you do that a little bit, but that's okay. Like you'll be fine. You're going to survive. And I think that if you're doing a backpack hunt, that's a good place to be. And that stuff I learned that stuff from more experienced backpack hunters and guys that have done it. And that was like, kind of like, this is our standard. You need calories. I think you need to make sure that you have enough protein. One of the things to think about is like, as you move, eat your carbs a lot more, right? Like, because they're going to help keep you hydrated and they're going to help with your fueling as you move. You also digest them way faster. And then when you sit down, eat your proteins and your fats. And have a balanced meal, but kind of pardon those up, because like they're harder on your stomach. They're going to suck more blood to your stomach as you're moving. But that's a simple way to kind of break down how you might eat. But from a caloric standpoint, some guys will go up to 3,000 a day. Some guys try to hang around 2,500. But I think the biggest thing is like, yeah, you can get away with eating some junkier food. And I think that that's okay, like when you're hunting. But you need some quality protein. And you need to make sure that you're likely getting enough calories for you. And you need to experiment with it. So that's one of the reasons that I think doing some overnight trips in the off season, like whether you're going to do some scouting trips or you're just doing some backpacking, like a weekend backpacking trip can teach you a lot about what you need for your caloric needs when you go into the backcountry, like how much you're willing to carry and how much you actually need. Now, it's going to be different on day 9 and day 10, and you need to understand that. But kind of following that balance of foods is the best place to be. But you definitely need quality protein. I've made the mistake of eating like an absolute slob and just being like, I just need calories. And I felt like absolute dog shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. So eating relatively decent foods and just making sure that you have enough calories, there's a balance in there. And that's what you want to strike. Yeah.
And I'll give you my uneducated opinion, but just based on my own personal experience with it was like, for me, I've learned I need a little more calories of like, I shoot for about that 3,000, 3,100 a day for me personally. When I was down from 2,000 to 2,500, I was losing so much weight on extended hunts. And this is where I think it also is important. Like if you're going for 2 weeks, that calorie deficit over that time is going to be more detrimental than it is for 5 days, per se. And also the terrain and how much weight you're carrying for as far as burning it, because it's impossible to completely fuel yourself enough to replenish those calories that you're losing on a hunt like that. I think I'd use something to do a calculation before. It's a ridiculous amount of calories that you burn when you're hiking with 25, 30 pounds on your back, covering multiple thousand feet of elevation a day over 8 to 10 miles. Like you're burning a lot. Like it's really
and
difficult.
Everything costs you more calories. Like you're sleeping on the ground on your pad. Like you have temperature regulation. Like everything costs you calories. Yeah.
Yeah. And like as far as like the food, I'm at a point where I've been eating the same things for so long that I'm like trying to find different stuff, because I found things that work as far as like fueling me, but there's this part of like I really don't want to eat some of that stuff anymore. So I've tried to find, and like a rule for me is trying to have at least one thing a day that's kind of fun. Don't worry about what it's actually there for, but something that's like I look forward to, that maybe it's just a salty snack or something that gives me that, like, I really look forward as a mental like boost with it. But that's really interesting. Something I picked up on right there was the eating more of the carbs while you're moving, and then the protein and fats while you're kind of sitting. And I didn't know that before. That's awesome.
Gastrointestinally, you just seem to tolerate them better. Especially like, let's say you have a hard hike where like you're going to go up a hill, your heart rate's going to get high, like that kind of stuff. You're just going to tolerate them better typically, So some people might do better, but as a rule of thumb, like I typically eat my proteins and fats when I'm resting and carbs when I'm moving.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to move on to building a hunt plan, which is one that I wrote in the email series here. So I'll start with it, and Todd, you can add in there. But
sure,
basically something that I've learned, and from people that were more experienced than me, I think Mark Livesey might have been one of the first people that really taught me this, was building a hunt plan for having backup plans, because a hunt plan is a tool that is used. And the way I look at a hunt plan is to have backup options when things don't go well. Like you need to have option A, B, C, D, E that are there. So when option A has too many people, or the weather isn't right, or there's no elk there, no deer there, that you can move through without creating additional stress or anxiety that you're already getting on some of these hunts through strenuous activity or anything else that comes with it. And my hunt plan consists of typically 3 to 5 hunt areas and 3 to 5 specific spots within that. And I find that by e-scouting those portions ahead of time and putting down notes and having the offline map saved in those places, that allows me to be able to adapt and change without stress or anxiety in it.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I learned from you is doing more of that. 'Cause, I'll e-scout and be like, okay, I kind of got a good idea. And then I'll just go hunt and try to figure it out, but I think what you hit the nail on the head with there is like, you're going to be tired. You're going to feel stress. Like it's just like anything else. Like you make these tougher decisions ahead of time so that when you're in the moment, all you have to do is go, all right, well, there's too many dudes at A. What are we going to do? Here's B. Okay. That's not that much of a time difference for us to get over there and start hunting,
I'll give you an example. 2018, I was in Colorado, and I'd hunted this area 2 years prior. I knew where I should be able to find elk at, but didn't realize that the area was in a drought that year, and all the grasses in the high country were burned off. So the elk were lower. Well, in that area, the lower was private, and I couldn't hunt there. There was no fresh elk sign anywhere. And I had a bunch of areas in that general area marked, but I had nothing outside of it, no backup plans. had to drive out to town, get cell service, look at maps again, re-download things, I lost almost a day and a half by the time I was able to relocate in that unit. And that's precious hunting time that you have that I could have, if I had backup plans for different conditions like that, it would help me be able to shift and move. And like this past year in Montana, I had options for going in deep. I had spots for hunting close to the truck, and I had things in the mid-level. And there was a ton of hunting pressure on the deep spots and right next to the roads. And the plans that were in that middle ground worked out for us. And I just think any way that you can make that hunt more enjoyable, like we're talking about with fitness, with your planning, with your e-scouting, all those, the more prep work you do there, the better situation you can be in. And some of these things, it will take some actually doing it and to be able to learn those lessons or figure out what's, a priority for you or important. But I believe hunt plans are super important. And that also includes writing down essential addresses and phone numbers that are there, like places to stay. Say you do need to get a hotel after a while, or you shoot something and you want to go have a place to stay. Meat processors, hospitals, taxidermists, food and grocery stores, gas stations, laundromats, emergency contacts, all those things. Having that stuff, I keep a copy of that printed out in my first aid kit. I keep a copy in my truck. It helps to be able to do that. Again, when I had the altitude sickness, I had to go to the hospital. I had it already written down what direction I need to go. There was no cell service to plug in my phone and type in my GPS where I needed to go. But having that available and knowing made that so much easier. And actually, when you sign up for the email list, you can click on a little link there and it gives a sample hunt plan of mine that you can use and create your own hunt plan there. So I remember when I shared that with you originally, and you're like, man, you gotta sell this, like the building the hunt plan thing.
Dude, it's so good. It really is. It's very detailed, and I really appreciate how your brain works in that way. But I mean, even just your example about getting to the hospital, having the med plan aspect of it dialed in is huge. Like knowing where the hospitals are, how long it might take to get there, what the numbers are, knowing the numbers even of an ambulance company or what it might be, so having that stuff listed, dude, like we all have, I mean, God forbid anything happens, and chances are something won't, but like if you cut yourself bad, you're going to want to be able to get that problem solved as quickly as possible. And that's also a really good reason to carry a good first aid kit with like maybe more than one tourniquet, or at least, having a redundant system where your buddy has a tourniquet and everybody has the things that you need to be able to take care of yourself,
Yeah, well, there's a big scar on top of my knee right now from last year when I was cutting up an elk, and I did that by myself, stabbed myself above the knee. It was kind of panicked because it was bleeding like crazy, but had my first aid kit, knew where it was at, top lid of my pack, easy to get to, was able to stop the bleeding, tape up with quick gauze, have that, clean everything, have it there, and be able to take care of myself before I went and got medical attention. Now, I will say I made a big mistake. I did a good job of taking care of it to get myself out of the backcountry. I didn't do a good job at the follow-up. I didn't go to the hospital right away, and I was too late to get stitches that I needed to. So I've got this nasty wound scar on my knee, but I did keep it clean, so I didn't get infected or anything. But it was there were some things I could have done better. But having that kit, that doesn't need to be, and that's the next section here is emergency preparedness. But your kit doesn't need to be this giant, first aid kit that's got everything in there that anything out there that you can think of, but things that you know how to use, having basic training and how to use that stuff, knowing how to be able to stop the bleeding if you have allergic reactions. Trying to think of some other things here.
You should have that shit listed for sure. Like,
do you
have any kind of, because you might be unconscious, so people need to know that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so like for me, I carry a very small first aid kit for the most part. I have one of the Uncharted triage kits, and then I add a few things to that personally, I add a tourniquet to it. I add a roll of Leuko tape because that can be used for anything from blisters to holding on bandages if you're sweaty and dirty and bandages don't want to stick. Whatever it is, that Leuko tape helps out so much. And those types of things. And the emergency preparedness too of like, if you are driving, what are you keeping in your truck in case you have a breakdown or you have a flat tire? Do you have a full size spare that you can? Another thing that I've run into before, and luckily never had to deal with it. But I've went out before the first time out there and realized I didn't even have a spare with me, which was a terrible idea. So there's things that you learn in that preparedness side of things, and this is not to overcomplicate it. You don't need to be like a total prepper as far as with things, but really thinking about what can happen and this all comes back to how can you make sure that experience, one, in emergencies you're able to take care of yourself, but two, just to have a better experience. And that's how I look at that.
I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything. I just play one on TV, but I would definitely consider. And I'm not saying like, how do I want to say this? I take no responsibility other than what I'm about to say is like, this is something that I do. And so I make sure that I have anti-anemics, which is like anti-nausea medication in my pack. I have painkillers, pretty strong ones, because what if you're by yourself and you snap your ankle and you got to get yourself out? So I have anti-nausea medication. I carry pretty strong painkillers. And what else? Another good idea, and I got this tip. I forget who I got this tip from. Antibacterial eye cream. And so like that you could put into your eyes, because then that way you can use it in your eye if you need to, but it's also, you can use it for cuts and stuff on the rest of your body. So I think thinking about what situations you might get in, because like if you eat something wrong or you get sick back there, just taking care of the nausea allows you to move. Taking care of the pain allows you to move, all of that kind of stuff. So something to consider, like maybe talking to your doctor to getting those kind of prescriptions from it.
Yeah, I agreed. And I think I just thought about this. I do have a video on my YouTube channel. It's also a Gear Talk podcast from last August. I don't remember the number of it, but if you search first aid kits, where I was in Alaska, and then me and my buddy Ethan that were up there, we just went through what we were carrying in that kit to look at some more of the specifics. But another thing is a way to be able to reach people in an emergency and SOS type advice. So Garmin InReach is something that I've carried a mini for a lot of years. Super nice. Now, another new thing that just came out, if you have an iPhone 14 or newer, I believe, you can use in the SOS feature in there, so you can text by satellite like you would with an InReach. And but you can only do that to I believe it's only to other people that have, if you're doing it like both out of service, they both have to have an iPhone 14 or newer, and you can message back and forth, but you can text anybody else, even if they don't have that, to send them a message. It's not as reliable at this point as an InReach, as far as you need to have a really good clear view of the sky. It takes a little bit longer to send a message, but I've been using that a lot. I still carry my InReach with me, but it's a really neat feature that's included on iPhones, doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that just makes me think about how you might set up redundant systems. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that you have a level of redundancy if you have to have it with yourself, but even with like your buddies, like if you can spread equipment across. Like a simple example is like I stash lighters everywhere. There's one in my pants. There's one in my pack. There's one there's one in my kill kit. Like they're everywhere because they're easy to lose. And it's like, there's a lot of my kill kit. I've actually kind of turned into a survival kit. Like I have a drinking straw in there. I have a signal mirror, all kinds. I have extra rations. I have extra food because when I think about it, a lot of times I rifle hunt more than I bow hunt. And so what's the last thing I'm going to drop is my pack lid. So, and then my kill kit goes in my pack lid. And so that way I have the shit that I need, with me all the time should anything go wrong.
Yeah. Yes. That's, I think, well, I know it was John Barclay, but I don't remember the exact specifics, but he called it like I don't want to screw it up, but there was basically like 3 different portions of your pack that you have. You have your things that are on you all the time. You have the things that if you're going in on a stock that you're carrying, like you're talking about with your lid and the stuff that you need there, but having it to where if you need food, you're away, or you need water, you need all that, you have that available versus if you do drop your pack and trying to be able to find it.
Yeah,
That's such a good tip.
And then, yeah, I mean, because you think about your shooting situations, like if you're going to sit behind your pack, right? But like a lot of times if you're going in on a stock and let's just say you can get to a point where you can lay prone, right? Then you have your pack lid for your front rest and you can use your bino harness as your back rest. So you can get a good stable thing and you have everything that you need to shoot. And then you also like shit gets wild. You have all of the resources you need to keep yourself at least somewhat comfortable, you know?
Yep. Don't leave the rain jacket at home either. Keep that in one of those, things.
Keep it in your pack lid. Take it with you. So
yes, 100%. All right. Last thing here is, should I stay or should I go? And even in the last year since I wrote this, things have changed a little bit that make it harder to stay. And what I'm going to say is like specifically with elk hunting, elk hunts are getting harder to be able to draw year after year or get a tag. So you are forced a little bit more to go to different ground. And I've kind of I've thought about this a little bit more, and let me explain it. So this goes for whitetail hunting or Western hunting. Should I stay or should I go? Hunting the same areas year after year, you get better at learning it. You get better at learning those areas. You understand how the animals are working in those areas, and you can eventually become more efficient and hopefully more successful by doing that. You can also, the disadvantage of going to the same places is you can get complacent and you just think, oh, this is where I found elk or deer before, and then they're not there, and then you're like, oh, the area just sucks, it's went downhill. But like if you were in that area for the first time, maybe you keep going, keep checking different ridges. So keeping that in mind, but going back to the same areas, if you're looking at it from a success standpoint, is, in my opinion, a better option. Now, there's also the part that something I deal with a lot is I like seeing new country. I want to see new things and new places. It's just understanding that it takes a little bit of time to become successful in newer places, and your success rate may drop a little bit. So keeping that in mind. But what I was going to say about with not being able to draw or get tags in the same area, especially with Colorado now not having over-the-counter elk opportunities, it's like maybe you can find areas that are similar in terrain. If you're getting good at glassing, maybe you find areas that have more open country or diverse of thick timber and open country, and then you can use some of those same skills over and over again and be able to apply. Or you're getting good at elk calling, so maybe like thicker timber spots, something along those lines. Keep that in mind, because I think with any of these Western hunts, especially if you're doing it DIY, then you have to look at things over a longer time horizon. You know, we talked about that with fitness, of the longer you give yourself the time, the better you're going to be able to be with that. It's the same thing with hunting, giving yourself the ample amount of time. And if something is like, hey, I just want to go do this once, and you want to be successful, maybe you should save up and have money to go with an outfitter to increase your odds.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that helps me frame this for myself is I'll caveat this by saying, of course I want to kill something. Like, of course I do. But I make the main objective to learn. And if you frame it that way for yourself, the pressure feels a little bit different. And it's easier for you to extend that time horizon and say, well, I'm a hunter, so I want to be better at hunting, so I need to learn. And just being realistic with yourself of like, you know, think about all the areas you hunt back home for whitetails even, and how long it's taken you to kill the buck that you might want to kill in that area. Okay, well, you're driving most of the continent away to try to hunt something that you don't see every day. Like it's it might be a minute till it happens, you know? So, and I think it's just changing your perspective with that will help you realize that. But I understand tags are expensive. You're taking time away from work. You're taking time away from your family. And it's like, well, you're making an investment to hunt. You want to kill something. You want to bring something home, of course, but like really framing it the right way for yourself will make you enjoy it more and likely make you more successful, because instead of hyper focusing on the critters, you're paying attention to more of the environment, so that by proxy, you have a better chance of getting close to the critters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, 100% agree with you there. And look, also another question that I was asked recently is like, what were some components of hunts that made you enjoy them the most, or what did you like about them? And it was like, when I gave myself enough time to immerse myself of like learning what the animals are doing, because if I'm rushed, it's like, oh, you have 4 days to be able to go do something. Again, I understand people have certain work obligations or vacation, but the longer you can extend that time horizon and just be able to immerse yourself and enjoy it, man, you learn so much more and are ultimately more successful from that standpoint of doing it. But like when it comes to Western hunting, for me, most of it hasn't been like, oh, I want to shoot the biggest elk out there. I think we were talking about it before we started recording here, but it's like there's certain experiences that I want to have. And like I like glassing, I like spot and stalking. Like I just love that style of hunting. So I want to find more opportunities where I get to do that, because that's more fun to me to do that. And yeah, you start to learn those things from doing it, and it makes it more enjoyable.
And I think it really comes down to to really narrowing down for yourself and making conscious what you value about hunting and the thing that you're hunting.
Yep.
Right? Because it's as much as so I like to mostly eat wild game. That hasn't been the case in the past couple of years, because I've made some changes in my life that have made that more difficult, but I mostly like to eat wild game. That said, none of us have to hunt to eat. So you might as well do it the way that you like to do it.
Yep.
Because it's for enjoyment, it's for enjoyment.
I agree with you there, Todd. And otherwise it's like, at the end of the day, if you got to be doing it for what you want to be doing it for and the experience you're looking for it, because nobody else cares. And you're the one that when you get buried 6 feet under, that's all those experiences that you had, like that's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's gone. So yeah, man, I totally agree. It's one of those things where I think, far be it from me to be critical of social media or anything, because I obviously use it to my advantage and everything. But I think that we see a lot of shit on social media that changes the way that people think about, first of all, how successful they should be or could be while they're hunting, and what it means to be a good hunter or why you're hunting. And there are just all these weird made up pressures that a lot of times we put on ourselves that just don't matter. It's like, and when it really comes down to it, is like, think of what you would spend on a vacation, right? Just a regular vacation to go to whatever it might be, to a resort or whatever. You're going to spend a shit ton of money. So let's say you we'll say, I think it would probably average out that $1,000 on an elk tag. And then you spend however much money getting yourself there. And then you get to spend all this time in the mountains, typically with people that you like, doing something that you like. And then there's a chance that you get to come home with meat and fur and horns. Like, frame it that way for yourself. And I think you end up liking it and enjoying it a lot more. Like, yeah, because if you look at success rates, chances are you're not going to kill something the first time. You're not gonna. That's okay. But you have to put it in the right frame for yourself.
Enjoying that process too, even if your ultimate goal is like, because again, we all want to be successful, but understanding the realistic portion of it, I think will help you enjoy that even more. Of like, might take me a few years of doing it, and I'm okay with that, because I'm going to learn a hell of a lot. I'm going to have a great time, and I'm going to push myself, and just have a good experience.
My buddy Christian has been hunting elk since coming from Pennsylvania, going west, Christ, for 15 or 20 years now. Not every year, but he hasn't killed one yet.
Mm-hmm.
He's all right with that.
Yeah, still keeps going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully we change that next year, but nonetheless. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Todd, where can people sign up for the email newsletter to get these daily emails for 13 days? Not getting spammed or anything, but to be able to get all this information at, where was that landing page again?
Yep. So we'll put it in the show notes for this, and then it'll be in my social media, and if you don't have it in your social media, you should. So in our link trees, so you'll be able to click it there, and then we'll throw it. If you don't mind, Beau, if you could put it in the show notes of this episode.
Yeah, thanks for telling me how to run my show, Todd. Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes here. Whether you're watching it on YouTube or you're listening to it on one of the audio feeds, go into the show notes, and I'll have a link there, or either Human Predator Pack Mule or Todd Bumgardner on Instagram, and then
Human Predator Pack.
Okay, not on yours. Okay,
not on my personal one. No,
I thought I could tell you to do that.
No, you tried, but I tried, but you were not successful. So.
All right, Human Predator Pack Mule on Instagram, or you can find it under my stuff, Beau Martonik, or East Meets West Hunt. So
awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, man. No, I had a lot of fun, and I think this was a really good episode. I think people are going to get a lot out of it. So
I would have to agree. And check out your website, humanpredatorpackmule.com, and reach out if they have any questions about the programming, the Backcountry Ready stuff like I'm doing, or the fully guided, or the DIY, whatever package kind of fits you there. But highly recommend. Todd has been super helpful for me personally. So if you're interested in that at all too, reach out to him.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Hey, guys. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.